Hello, scholars. We're now going to take a look at evaluating audit evidence. And I've got a work paper binder here. Remember, work paper binders or work papers can be in electronic form and hard copy. We have permanent files, we have current files. The current files typically show the current work that all bleeds towards the trial balance, confirming all the amounts, and then the aggregation of them into the properly classified amounts for the financials. We want to make sure that we've evaluated that evidence properly and that it's appropriate. So let's take a look and understand. You'll note here that in this particular one, we have some work papers. We got a lot of details on it, and we seem to have a lot of information associated with it. Sarah, a first-year staff at Becker CPA Review, or CPA firm, made the selection for this test. As you can see, her result, she's documented it. Based on her testing, she concluded on whether she feels a transaction is recorded appropriately or not. She will also make an overall conclusion on her testing. We will get a closer look at her first selection and all the details when we get into Audit 4, Module 2. Nathan is our senior at Becker CPA firm, which means he probably has about 3 to 5 years of experience. He will review the work papers provided by Sarah. He might randomly select some of these items to look at in more detail and make sure they are recorded properly in this work paper. If he has any questions for Sarah, he will send the work papers back to her. Once her documentation is updated and he feels the work is sufficient and appropriate, he will pass it along to Michelle. Michelle is the manager at Becker CPA firm, which means she probably has 6 to 11 years of experience. She will be looking at this detail at a high level to see if anything makes sense. Some items that Michelle will consider, well, does the work paper performed or the work performed, audit work, meet the objectives of the test? Is the audit evidence sufficient? Does the results of the audit procedures performed support the conclusions? Then there's Donna. Donna is the partner at Becker CPA firm, which means she probably has 12 or more years of experience. She will be looking at the audit work papers at a very high level throughout the engagement. Near the end of the audit, Michelle and Donna will perform ratio analysis to ensure that adequate evidence has been gathered in response to unusual or unexpected balances identified during the audit. She will also make sure that the conclusions reached support the audit opinion. Sarah's work paper was recently reviewed by Michelle. In this case, you can see there are several notes that she is making on this item. Oh, look, it looks like there are a lot of review notes. Sometimes that happens. By the way, usually it's on a Friday night when you're ready to go home and have a date planned. But Peter, of course, our sugar bear, has very good advice for you. He says, no dates, right? If the person doesn't want to tolerate you, right, Pete tells you, get rid of them. You'll have somebody better after you become a CPA. So maybe that doesn't bother us as much. Well, let's go through the notes and I'll provide a more insight into why Michelle included them. Our very first note, Michelle says, please update to match work paper such and such. According to that work paper, the control was not operating effectively. Therefore, per the planning work paper, the sample size was supposed to be increased, right? More risk, more work. All right, here's what happened. Well, during the audit plan, Nathan thought the control for accounts payable was working. So he assessed control risk low and decided to test the controls to support a low level of risk. However, when he tested the controls around the accounts payable, he saw that they were not, in fact, working. This caused him to increase the risk. More risk, more work. This resulted in the need to change the nature, the extent, more work, and the timing, probably moving it to year end to achieve the same level of audit risk. He decides to increase the number of selections. Unfortunately, this work paper was not updated for this, and Sarah now needs to go and select 5 more. The second review note, is this purchase order number correct? You'll notice the number is way out of whack. All the others are 1541, 1540, and then it's 16,025. It appears to be much higher than any of the others. Just by performing an overall review, Michelle noticed that the purchase order number appeared to be out of place. You can see that most of the purchase order numbers were between 15 and 1700. This purchase order was way higher. Additional evidence or correction of the number will need to be done. Our next note states, please obtain additional information as to why this payment occurred so far after year end. Make sure the corroboration of inquiry with supporting information. Michelle is looking for more persuasive evidence. The further explanation as to why the company has elected to pay for an item that was received in May of year 2 and pay for it in January of year 3? Well, we need to look into that one. Now, there may have been extended payment terms, maybe, to entice them to buy it, but we need to find out why. Michelle also has another note. This should have been excluded from the year 2 listing. Please review and propose an adjusting journal entry if necessary. Michelle reviewed the explanation of this item, and the explanation doesn't seem to be appropriate. Additional procedures will be needed to perform and determine if the transaction was recorded correctly or not. If the transaction was recorded incorrectly, an adjusting journal entry may be needed for this possible error in the cutoff. The next item was, this explanation doesn't make sense and is all based on oral evidence, right? AEIO, the lowest form. Please obtain further information and obtain evidence that supports this inquiry. In this case, Michelle feels that sufficient evidence hadn't been obtained. Our next item, please reassess conclusions once review notes have been cleared and you have inspected the 5 additional selections. Michelle is reminding Sarah to reconsider her conclusion. As you can see, the auditor uses judgment throughout the audit to evaluate the sufficiency and the appropriateness of audit evidence. As we saw, this includes consideration of such items as controls, which affect the nature, extent, and timing of your audit procedures, the source, the reliability, and the persuasiveness of audit evidence obtained, and of course, the actual results of the audit procedures performed ultimately should lead to the appropriate conclusion. Hopefully that gives you some insight, and you're now ready to move on.